because telling my story is an incredible personal thing for me, so I'm going to be reading it to you. And I do apologize, I tend to get a little bit emotional, but it's important for me to share what happened and to show you that I am strong enough to have gotten to the other side. And for the women in the audience and for the men in the audience who've been in situations that they didn't understand, what I'm here to show you is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It starts out as a pinprick, and the next thing you know, you're the one shining light on the path for the next person. So I do want to take a moment and recognize the fact that my son was strong enough to be here with me tonight. He experienced this with me. And so I do want to say thank you very much, Sam. I love you, and I'm proud of you for being here. So my name is Rebecca. I am a daughter. I am a mother. I am a college graduate, and I am an educator, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. I met him at the end of summer. I'd been out of a previously unhealthy relationship for about 8 months, and I thought I'd finally met a guy that I could build a future with. He was handsome and he was charming. He had a good job with the state, and he also had a part-time job. He had custody of his daughter. On paper, he looks like a great guy. He showered me with attention, constant texts, constant phone calls. Our relationship moved very, very quickly. For me, that wasn't a red flag, because I actually have an example in my own life of a successful couple who married after being together for 3 months. It's my father and my stepmother, and they celebrate their 42nd wedding anniversary in January. So when he said, "I'm going to marry you," I just thought it was my fairy tale coming true. There were good times in the beginning. He took the time to get to know the things that were important to me. He seemed interested in supporting those things going forward. I met his 14-year-old daughter almost immediately, and we started including our kids in activities that were just like what normal families do. The possessive jealousy and the control he was taking in my life snuck up on me. One night driving home on the freeway with our kids in the car, a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, sent me a text that nearly got us all killed. He saw the text, who it was from, started swerving wildly through traffic, 4 lanes of I-40 traffic, at about 75 miles an hour, screaming at me, "Delete the text, block that person from your phone, I don't want you talking to him ever again." He made me change my phone number that night. He controlled who I was allowed to give my phone number to after that night, including challenging what family members of mine were allowed to have it. He demanded all of my passwords. He went through my entire Facebook history, my entire 10-year Facebook history, and deleted everything he didn't like. Photographs and memories, gone forever. He became enraged that a previous boyfriend still had photographs of me from a vacation we had taken years previously, and didn't stop until he had hacked into that Facebook account and completely annihilated it, wiped out everything, including photographs that cannot be replaced. He read my entire email history, and again, he deleted everything he didn't like. He demanded that I cut off contact with all my closest friends, including one of my best friends, who happens to be a happily married man living in Colorado. He didn't want me spending time with my closest friend here in town, or in fact, any of my friends. He became so controlling that my mother asked me to create a safe phrase in case I needed help. Fights with him were horrific. He would automatically escalate to the worst case scenario. He would threaten to leave, he would threaten to kill himself. There was no middle ground, there was no compromise. Shortly before the wedding, he decided that we were going to give away my 3 little dogs. One morning as he was getting ready for work, and he was working in Statesville at the time, he said he was taking them with him, and he was going to drop them off with his mother in Morganton because it was friends of hers that were taking my dogs. I said absolutely not. I hadn't spoken to anybody about this. I hadn't met anyone. I instinctively knew that if I let him leave with my dog, something terrible would happen. When he spoke of his exes, he said horrible things about them always. He bragged how he had tricked his daughter's mother into custody. He bragged how he had basically bankrupted another ex. He made sure I knew he was the one with all the power. He said he'd been married a few times, never said how many that was. When we picked up our marriage license, the clerk of court confirmed with me that it would be my second marriage, looked at him and said, "And this will be your sixth, is that correct?" I found out later I was his eighth. Even on that day, we got into another argument that led to his typical threats to leave me, and as had become usual, I believed he would end things. Instead of letting him go, I stayed with him. Since everything was moving so fast, we were constantly juggling where we stayed, whether we were here in Asheville or at his house in Morganton, trying to figure out what happened with my son, who's in early college here in Asheville, where I would get a job, where we would live. We were so scattered all the time, I never felt calmly settled. I never really caught on to what my life had become. More and more, my life was only what he would allow. I noticed a few things that seemed odd, but I never stopped to examine the whole picture. For instance, his mother wasn't making plans to come to the wedding, and he didn't have any friends that wanted to come either. We never socialized with other couples, his friends or mine. And the screaming at his daughter became terrifying. One night, she was so sick that she begged us to take her to the ER. And he told her to just get out of the house and walk there. The wedding still went off as planned. My son, my mom, my aunt came, my best friend Stephanie and her boyfriend, his daughter, and my son were our attendants. We had a great weekend, came home ready to build our life, or so I believed. 2 weeks later, the day after Christmas, we took the kids to the mall in Hickory. As soon as they were out of the car, he said he had something he needed to tell me. Turns out 2 of his exes had tried to contact me through Facebook, and he had intercepted both messages and deleted them. He came up with a version of the story he thought would keep me from asking too many questions, and because by this time I was chained to this path, I didn't challenge him. Even though at this point I was starting to realize I didn't really know the truth about this man that I had married, and I recognized that my life was no longer mine to manage, I still stayed. 2 more weeks passed. We returned to Asheville to stay at my house as I was still in the process of packing and relocating. At the time, my son was splitting his time between our house and my mom's. And then the morning of January the 13th. I can't go into the details of that day with you. It's horribly traumatizing for me. It would traumatize you. That morning, 2 of my 3 little dogs died. And 2 days later, the third had to be euthanized. His actions on that day and over the next few days showed me what a monster I had married. I knew he was responsible, and knowing he was capable of that made me sure he was capable of harming me, my son, my remaining animals as well. I knew it was only a matter of time before the next violence. I had to make a plan. It was now a matter of my own life or death. Over the next week, I did everything I could to figure out my escape plan. I spoke with several family members and friends, working out where my surviving dog would go, where my horses would go, where I would go. My son would stay with my mother. I spent hours on the phone with the National Domestic Violence Hotline crying and trying to work out what to do. Trying to process what had happened, what was happening, and what I was afraid was going to happen. I spoke with Helpmate and arranged to meet with a crisis counselor. By the way, I was hoping she'd be here tonight, but she's not. It's Julia. She was amazing. The day I left, I barely remember. All I know is that I got out and I got to safety. My mother, convinced that something terrible had happened, contacted the sheriff's department and they conducted tests on 2 of my dogs. The results showed that they had, in fact, been poisoned. I stayed with a person I consider my other mama for about a week while we wrapped up my basic situation And then I got in my car and I drove to Ohio to my aunt's. I stayed gone for 4 months. I barely left the house, and I never left the house alone. My interactions with others had no sense of normalcy. I felt like I was just pretending to be a person, that any reaction was just a facade, that no one could see the real me. I never cut off contact with my husband during this time. I couldn't. I thought I loved him. I thought he loved me. I thought that somehow something was going to change. I was addicted, and I was codependent on the abuse. I suspect the thing that kept me from physically going back to him was simply the distance. He asked me to help him annul our marriage instead of getting a divorce. He said we would remarry as soon as I got back to town. It turns out he was already engaged to the next one when we signed the paperwork. Months later, my mom learned that he had committed bigamy, which is a felony in the state of North Carolina, when he married me. By that time, I was stable enough that I was able to go to the police in his home county and provide them with documentation that he had, in fact, committed felony bigamy as well as several other crimes. Unfortunately, he remains free at this time due to the backlog of cases in his home county. He hasn't even been arrested yet. The most frightening thing for me is, and I do apologize to the law enforcement officers in the audience, my ex is a cop, and I don't feel safe. During my recovery, I sought counseling in Ohio with the Artemis group. I attended survivors groups there. When I came home, I came back to Helpmate. I was able to access services here immediately, and I was allowed to have crisis counseling for months. Because of this resource, I've been able to make progress in healing. Having a trained therapist to talk with who understands the dynamics of abuse and how to help get to the other side is what saved me. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I left him. I saved my own life that day and every day since. I've shared my experience, hoping that someone else might draw strength knowing it's possible to get out. I've warned the other women in his life. I was able to eventually cut off all contact with him. I've spoken with the police, the attorneys, the Department of Social Services on behalf of my former stepdaughter. I've gone to the judge to ask for the full protections available under the law. I am fully prepared to face him in court so that he is held responsible for what he's done. And I will continue to speak out because what happened to me was wrong. No one deserves to experience anything like it. And if by speaking out I help just one person to find his or her own strength to live, then at least I've made some difference in the world. Domestic abuse isn't just physical. My ex never hit me. He tortured me psychologically. He killed my dogs. He took away every bit of my independence and privacy. He isolated me and controlled me. The damage he did may last me for the rest of my life. I continue to have horrible flashbacks and anxiety. But I am strong, and I will continue to live my life. So remember, I am a daughter, a mother, a college graduate, and an educator, and I am a survivor of domestic abuse. But surviving is not the end of my story.